This is the Free Heel Life Podcast, episode number 91. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Free Heel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it's another great week. Friends and family in the Telemark world. Loving being back and doing another podcast. So I'm just going to hop right into it with some not so long newsroom and notes. Basically, the main thing to let you guys know is we're slowly bringing back some staff into the shop for the upcoming season. So you'll probably see some familiar faces online and on some upcoming podcasts. And we'll be digging into what you guys can expect this season at the shop, what's going on in Free Heel Life land at large with Telemark Skier Magazine, Free Heel Life Skis, Free Heel Life Shop, all the good stuff we've been talking about. And it's exciting to think that it's going to be more consistently snowing. And I'm saying that because there was actually some snow here in Utah this past week. So a little early, August, but hey, maybe that's a sign of things to come. And we can't be more excited than that to start seeing snow already. Started pressing our first batch of FHL protector skis, and I can't express how fun this process has been working on these and seeing them come to life and putting all of our blood, sweat, and tears into them and making them into something that we're really proud of. So we'll be putting more info out on those. We're pretty much if you've been listening to the podcast, we've been batching these out and doing it on a pre-order basis. So if you're interested in finding out more, you can always email us at customerservice@freeheellife.com and just put protector skis in the subject line, and we'll have someone get in touch with you about our waiting list and some more information about, any questions you have that we can answer. We're happy to set up a phone call and give you a ring and talk through all that. So today, my guest is one of the OGs of Telemark Freeride skiing in North America. He's originally from Ontario, Canada, where he grew up skiing areas like Calabogie Peaks, Mount Pakenham, and Whiteface down in New York. He was introduced to telemark skiing through his ski shop job in high school and decided to try it after his friend encouraged him to mount up some tele skis. He eventually moved to British Columbia to pursue more outdoor adventures around skiing and climbing. That's where he ended up helping a friend open up and run a ski shop near Sun Peaks, near the Kamloops area in British Columbia. Over his time there, he continued to telemark as often as he could and started gaining some attention locally for his skills on the hill. From the late 90s into the early 2000s, he began competing in freeride competitions, both Telemark and Alpine. He also appeared in several Telemark ski movies, including Unparalleled Productions and Toughguy productions throughout those years. He currently lives in New South Wales, Australia, where he skis his local resort Perisher, as well as all the nearby backcountry zones. You'll also find him working at Wilderness Sports, one of the long-lasting shops in that area that has always been a stalwart supporter of telemark skiing in Australia. Please welcome to the Free Heel Life Podcast, Steve Crazy Leeder. All right, Steve, welcome to the Free Heel Life Podcast, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. Hey, Josh, thanks for having me over or having me online. I'm not really over there anymore. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm pumped, dude. I'm pretty sure this is the first time we've talked in person, which blows my mind. Have we talked in person a long time ago?
Nah, I was thinking about that as well. We have crossed probably crossed paths, but not really. For over 20 years of stuff, 25, almost 20.
Yeah.
Way too long.
Yeah.
I don't want to say those high numbers.
No, it's like 20. I know. I was thinking about it too. And it's funny because you kind of predated me a little bit with what you were doing. And I want to get into that because I'm a total fanboy of all the old stuff. Everybody knows that. You're one of those characters that you kind of cross over a lot of different movie history and freeride history and like there's some interesting stuff, and I'm excited to get into that. So I'm psyched that you wanted to do the podcast. That's awesome. So tell people where are you living right now? Where are you at? Where on the globe are you?
Right now, I am in a little tiny village. I get a village suburb. It's called Calabogie. It is just outside of the Australian snow town of Jindabyne, which is below. It's just below where the snow starts. We've got Kosciuszko National Park, which is it's the home of Australian snow. The Victorians will yell at me and say, "No, we have snow too." And I go, "Yes, you do, but we have rad mountains." They come up here. They know. For everyone that kind of goes, "Wait, it's Australia. Don't you just surf?" There's cool skiing here. There's cool mountains. It's just shorter.
Yeah.
It's tinier.
Is that and now I'm forgetting because I talked to those other guys last year on the podcast. Those Tele guys, I think they're Victoria, I believe. Didn't you just did their podcast? They are. You just did their podcast. I did just
talk to them. I actually honestly had no. Apparently, one of my mates that he used to guide for the shop that I do a whole bunch of different stuff for. And he's back down in Victoria, and he's good mates with them. And I don't know. I'd actually answered a social media message that they wanted to talk about the store with the owner of the store, Bruce. And then at the end of it, oh yeah, that Steve Crazy guy.
So they pegged you for the shop guy first? Oh, that's funny. I haven't listened to it yet.
No, they'd reached out on the shop social media, and because I run that as well, I was first to see it. They wanted to just do something about the store, but the next sort of thing was, hey, how do we get in touch with that Steve Crazy guy? I'm like, well, hey, guess what? You're talking to me now. But it's pretty easy to find me on social media.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, that was interesting.
That's funny. So and so you're okay. So Jindabyne is New South Wales, if I'm not mistaken, and
it is
good. It looks like good skiing. I mean, I have not skied in Australia. I have been to Sydney and Brisbane, but not in the wintertime, so I have no concept. But I have watched that old Telemark movie from down there that has a lot of the Australian Alps. And there's big mountains, dude. There's like some good terrain down there.
There's cool stuff. There's in a little zone called it's called Little Austria. It's fun. It's techie. There's a bit of gnar stuff there, but there's the zone that everyone calls, or it's called the Western Faces, which is basically Watson's Crags, the Sentinel, that little zone. And it's badass. There's steep, big gullies, lots of rocky terrain. In a low snow year, it's gnarly as, but even in a big high tide snow year, there's rad stuff. I'm actually on my way out for the next 3 days I'm going to park a tent, and I'm going to go and hit up a bunch of different lines out there.
You're going to park a tent, huh? How do you park a tent?
Yeah.
How do you park a tent? Come on.
Well, I guess I can't really. It's not quite the same as my my old bus. I am going to dig a hole and put my tent up in said hole.
Okay. I thought maybe that was just a Australian term, like a car park versus like a parking lot. you know, like I'm going to park a tent. I've just never heard that. I've never heard that before.
I don't think it's an Australianism. It's my new girlfriend says that I have my own vernacular.
I was just going to say that. So by birth, you're Canadian, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. So before we go too far out, down in the Australia, the down under story, I'm curious. Yeah. Cause this being our first time talking, I have so many questions because where you've popped up over the years in my, like, you know, peripheral vision, like when you ended up in Australia, that's like a whole nother thing. But when I first saw you, it was, hey, there's Steve. You weren't Steve Crazy yet, though. You were Steve Leeder back then. You weren't Steve Crazy.
Yeah, right.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's sort of.
I don't think the crazy thing was around yet. I could be mistaken.
Even when I had my shop in Sun Peaks, well, it wasn't my shop. It was the Sun Peaks shop that I opened and then ran for a few years. I think it was just starting to be a thing. Because even I had a local web designer in Kamloops build a website for me, and we just went stevecrazy.com right from then.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, so you're from British Columbia originally. Is that where you were born?
No, I grew up in Ontario.
Oh.
So middle Canada,
yeah.
Which everyone calls the East, but yeah, middle Canada. Grew up skiing like
Blue Mountain.
Nah, that's Toronto. So my Ontario resort was Calabogie Peaks, Pakenham, and then all the Quebec resorts like Fortune and all the way that whole road. If you go from like Ottawa and go north, you go like there's a million little resorts. Camp Fortune is 15 minutes out of downtown Ottawa, and my cousins live just outside of Ottawa. So like every weekend, hell, during the week, that place was open until 9 every night, and the entire ski resort was lit up. So we could ski everywhere all night as well.
Wow.
So that was, we just ski. That was those, but my parents loved the Adirondacks, and that was where mountains and being in the middle of the mountains and going out back and doing stuff. I got into rock climbing and ice climbing there, snowshoeing, and then I was a snowboarder before Telemark, and so we did all that kind of stuff in the Adirondacks.
Yeah, I guess that's forever. Probably not too far, because I mean you can just go right across down. What towns are over there? Because you're over by like.
So Canton is the border town. Like Canton University is that little area. And then you go down, you go to like Tupper Lake. Then you go, Whiteface is the ski resort in Lake Placid.
Yeah.
And that, like, it was only a couple hours to get from my house to Lake Placid.
Oh, wow.
Like 2.5, 3, depending on like traffic and weather and all that stuff.
That's crazy. And so you were snowboarding. When was this? Like early 90s? You were like a snowboarder back then?
When I was like, from grade 8 to when I was like 16, 17, I was a snowboarder. I worked in a ski shop because I was a snowboarder. But I ended up always selling skis and then Nordic skis. And I had no idea about any of that. Well, the staff training was what I knew, but I was like, oh, it sounds lame talking about stuff if you don't do it. So I mounted up little NBC Nordic skis and went and tromped around the bush on those, and tried to just ski down driveways and ski down hills and everything around the house all winter. But Telemark was when I got really bored with snowboard, which, I mean, it's snowboarding. It's not that hard to get bored of it.
So was it at the shop that you saw Telemark the first time?
Kinda, I guess so. Yeah, we had the gear. There was some cables. There was 3-pin and leather boots. There was that stuff was there. And my good friend that owned a ski shop at the same time. He was, some 30 years alpine skier, and he went, hey, and he was my ice climbing and rock climbing buddy. He went, dude, let's try something new when we go to the resorts now. I went, okay, cool. So we both mounted up some Tele gear, and that's kind of when it all changed. My life changed forever. For that first season, though, I got my ass kicked every morning on those skis, and by noon I'd put my snowboard back on, and it'd be like I'd starting the day fresh again, and I just kept doing that so I could spend the whole day on the hill.
And but
eventually you get better.
And this is in Ontario then, right? That you started Telemark skiing?
Yeah, well, I was living in Ontario, but we were always skiing at Whiteface.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the Olympic bump run. I mean, Whiteface is known as, it's the old Olympic hill. The bump skiers still train there, and I kind of learned to Tele on one of the mogul, like one of the Olympic bump runs.
That's a good.
That was my training ground.
That's a good spot to learn.
It's like, well, I mean, obviously, you kind of figure out on the groomed run a little bit, and then, how do I get good at these turns? And I just started doing bumps, and far out, it makes you fast at changing turn. You just start running down the hill.
Yep. Yeah.
And mind you, now when I moved out to British Columbia, I never wanted to see. Anytime I found bumps, I kind of ended up just skimming across the top of them and not really ever skiing bumps, unless it was like spring slush bumps up on the glacier.
Yeah, and those are the fun ones that you're not getting wrecked on. Those Olympic runs are no joke though. Like, if anybody's ever stood by like a legit World Cup or Olympic level bump run, I mean, those things are massive and fast and tight.
Like, deep as, they're tight, they're gnarly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an egg carton tipped up 45 degrees on upside down.
Yeah. No, that's crazy.
Yeah, they're hectic.
Well, okay, so just give me, so I'm curious, time frame wise, when you're at Whiteface learning to Tele, is this like mid 90s? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's got
yeah, it would have been, because I was 16. I was 16 when I was skiing Whiteface, and I didn't move. I moved to British Columbia when I was 17.
Okay.
So
and you went out to Whistler, I'm thinking? Is that, because I'm just trying to plug in where I pick you up on the radar and like this story, because I'm like, wait, you're on the other side of the country at this point. And I'm like, how did you get to British Columbia? So you just got out of school and headed out?
Well, when
west?
I was in school, my last semester of school, I was managing the ski shop while I was in school, and they were really good. They'd either let me come in an hour or whatever late, so I could do my first 2 classes in the morning, or the weeks where I had my classes in the afternoon, they'd give me like a 2-hour lunch break. So I could still do class, but still manage the ski shop. And even then, I stayed back at the shop for another year almost after I graduated. And I went, hang on, all my ski buddies, all my climbing friends, everybody's already gone out to BC. I need to go. I need to get out there. So I jumped in my little white van that my dad and I had kind of souped up, and I drove out to Squamish, which is like on the coast of BC, just below Whistler.
Good climbing there.
And I went there for the climbing.
Yeah.
It was like, I mean, they call Squamish the little Yosemite Valley of Canada. And it really is. It's pretty epic.
Yeah, that's a pretty area.
Was living. Yeah, and I was back there a few years ago, and far out. It's changed, but it hasn't. The dirtbag climbers are still there, but the mountain bikers have fully taken over town, and it's kind of like it's a suburb, like a north suburb of Vancouver now.
Wow.
Like it's an extension of North Van, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I don't think it's as remote as it once was like 20 years ago. That's okay. So
nah, definitely not.
Well, so you learn to Tele, and then as you move out for climbing, go to Squamish, you start skiing Whistler. And
no, I started in Kamloops. So at Sun Peaks, that's where I moved. Oh. That's where I opened up the shop.
Okay.
Sun Peaks was I opened up that ski shop. I was skiing like every single day. I didn't have a snowboard. I had my really old, just trashy nothing. It was a K2, like more a mountaineering, like a ski mountaineering ski with some Rotafella something cable binding and a pretty crap set of gear. But opened up that ski shop, was able to mount up a bit better gear, and I just started skiing every day. Anytime I wasn't in the shop, I was skiing. And that's sort of when I started. I got a good mate that he helped me in the shop. He liked taking photos, and we just went, well, we did some photos on the hill. Not that they went anywhere, and this is way before social media was a thing. So there wasn't really any way of sharing any of it. But I spent a few years running that shop. I guess my skiing sort of started taking notice a bit, and I met the guys from Ski Canada magazine, and the editor took a like to my little bit of differentness or eccentricity or
I like eccentricity. That's
a cool word.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Toilet paper word of the day. It comes in real handy.
Well, the one thing that strikes me as you're talking to me about this is, for those that aren't familiar with like this era that we're talking about, and that's why I was trying to kind of get a feel for the time frame, because if you're in anywhere really in the late 90s, which is this probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's sort of when we're talking about is late 90s, and especially in that zone in British Columbia, like skiing as a whole is changing a lot too. Like you're getting like Canadian Air Force, like with Mike Douglas and Auclair, JF Cousin, all these guys. I mean, is this kind of that same era that you're starting to like see twin tips and stuff? Am I correctly lining that up?
Yeah, it would be kind of right on that time. I think my shop had just started to see, we had a couple of 1080s and we had the Extreme, those two skis from Solomon, come into our shop. During the summer when I got over to school, I'd do the ski shop over at Sun Peaks. And then every summer I jumped in my little van or my little whatever I had, and I blasted back to Squamish. And I was always living in a tent or a trailer or a something in the free camp area. And I'd go up to Whistler. Well, we'd go either up to Whistler and ski the glacier, or we'd jump in the back of a pickup truck. And that's the thing with BC. Like, there's a million logging roads everywhere. So if you've got a four-wheel drive truck, you can get to snow all summer long. So we couple of my buddies did that all summer, and we'd find like little windlips, we'd find in jumps, and we'd find whatever we could, and just making summer, winter last sort of all year. And the next thing I know, it'd be like October again, and I'm going, shit, we're skiing POW already, but I got to get over to Sun Peaks and figure out where I'm living, get the shop back organized again, get all the bike gear out of it. Yeah. So that was like mid to late 90s. My last year, this is when Australia comes into it again. The last year that I was there, I went, hey, let's do a winter New Zealand and Australia. It would have just been New Zealand, but as you meet people,
just kept going
at the ski resort, I went, I better come and see you in Australia. And so it was a 6-month trip. It was supposed to be 3 months in Australia. I went up and down the coast, like from Sydney all the way to Cairns. And then I went, shit, it's like ski season's opening up. Got down here to Jindy and was straight on snow. And New Zealand didn't get any snow that year. Well, they did, but not really. And Australia got a meter of snow every week.
Wow.
It was ridiculous. Like, everyone told me, don't get used to this. It's never like this. Like, it's never, ever like this. And every week it just kept dumping. We'd have a whole season every week. Like, you go from Thursday morning, deep fresh POW. Then you'd do like a little bit of a backcountry trip. Then you'd go out to you'd start skiing fresh and corn. And then next thing, it's Wednesday night and you're getting all ready for fresh POW again.
So are you telemarking already at this point, like consistently?
Yeah. I'm full-time on Tele.
Nice.
From the time I moved out west when I was 17, I was full-time Tele.
Wow. That's so cool. And were you back then, do you remember bumping? I mean, now you're going to other countries. From now you go to BC, then you go to Australia. I mean, are you meeting other telemarketers at that time where they're like little crews? You know, do you remember meeting other tele skiers, or what was it like back then?
There was not many, like Sun Peaks. There was a couple old dudes, and they were on skinny. There was a couple of dudes there that were doing Tele. There was one of the Gord Bull, one of the old pro patrollers. There was Kamloops was a very mountaineering, touring town because they had the adventure travel guide program. So everybody that was anybody thinking about being a ski guide or a mountain guide was coming through Kamloops. So they were also coming up to the hill to practice a bit. And there was a few people, but not really. And nobody had sort of seen somebody trying to like
jump and
ski anything. Like there was terrain parks were starting to get bigger and better. And Sun Peaks, I was hitting all the terrain park, anywhere that I could think would be fun to ski, I was skiing it.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of what, and that, I mean, that kind of fills in some of the blanks for me, because it's like, when I remember seeing you, it was probably, like we said, almost 20 years ago I can't remember if it was a Toughguy movie or an Unparalleled movie, but
it was both. The first, I did all the filming with Josh first, because Nat
he wasn't rolling yet.
Josh did the first few movies, and then Nat started.
You want to hear my first?
So yeah,
you want to hear all of them. You want to hear my first Steve Leeder memory? Tell me if I tell me if I'm wrong. So the first thing that I always think of when I hear your name is I always think of the guy that had the volant skis. Is that correct?
Yeah. Heck yeah.
Because you were one of the first guys that I remember that I can't remember if they were pontoons or they must have been. They had reverse camber. They had to have been.
That was the spatula.
The spatula, not pontoon. It was pre-pontoon. You had
that was K2's version of that when Shane left Volant to go to K2.
Yes.
He designed he made them make that ski.
Yeah. And if someone, either you don't remember the spatula or you're too young or whatever, this is like a stainless steel, I believe, top sheet.
Yep.
And it's got reverse camber, so it's basically like a water ski, and then it's like pretty narrow at the tip and tail as well. But it was a funky kind of, Shane McConkey, like you said, had kind of developed this ski. You were for sure the first Telemark skier I ever saw on a spatula. One. Second memory is you're the first dude, I would venture to say that at least on film, you were one of the first guys trying to do big mountain line switch. That's what I remember. I mean, in those videos, dude, like, do you know anybody else who was trying to ride switch back then? Like,
nah, I guess probably not.
That's what I remember when I think about watching your segments. I was like, who is this dude? He's like this Canadian guy that I never see anywhere else, and then you're skiing switch on spatulas, and I'm like, this is awesome. I was like, this is pretty cool, man. I told you I was going to dig up some random stuff for you, dude. That was pretty random memories.
That's pretty cool. The switch thing, because I was only skiing really when I was only ever really skiing with Tele with Alpine skiers. The whole time at Sun Peaks, it was just Alpine skiers. Pretty much the whole time. At the start, it was Alpine skiers in Whistler. I somehow, the first year I was just like, the first year I got to Whistler, I was like, whoa, the world tour, the free ski tour is in Whistler. I'm doing that. Like, I ski those. I knew where they went. I knew the areas that it was. I went, I ski that stuff. Let's do a contest. Like, let's just do. Isn't that what people do when they.
I did it. Test themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, well, just do that shit. And I went, okay, cool. Let's go do it. So I entered. At probably the first couple of years, I was the first, at least the first year, I was probably the only Tele skier in the Canadian Free Ski Open. Scott McClory and Diana Morix and oh my God, his name. They were all on the Canadian national team.
The race team.
Telemark racing team.
Scott McClory was gnarly too, though. He was a really good freak.
That dude was just amazing.
Yeah.
And he took he was a badass racer. He could make those skis just do anything. And he got himself, because he was racing with Rosie, he ended up getting a pair of quad X's way back then. So Rossi had just come out with the Bandit series, like the single X to the triple X.
Yep.
And the team guys, there was a truckload. I think every other person in Whistler had a pair of quad X's somehow. But they were basically the World Cup race ski, but crazy fat.
Yeah, it was like a 2x4.
It was badass.
Yeah.
And because Scott was so strong of a racer, he could really make those things go. He could just put them on edge and plow through anything.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. Cool to hear his name, because like he definitely was like, yeah, like you said, he's like one of those old school guys that technical, like big mountain, went big, like dropped cliffs. Like you guys were a whole nother group of animals back then. I'll tell you, I watched.
I remember Diana Morix she was the Canadian national race girl, and she just went, well, that's the line. That's just what you ski down. And she just charged so hard. And like she was I remember some of the lines that she would ski were putting a bunch of the guys to shame. Like she was hauling ass and dropping off little drops, and she was putting guys to shame for sure. Yeah, she was very rad.
So like this little group, is this kind of doing those comps? Is that kind of where you started linking up with? I know you said you shot some photos early on, and yeah, it's funny. If you're from that era like I am and you are, it's like, yeah, of course there was no social media, but it is kind of funny to think like you could actually go shoot photos for fun and it might not go anywhere. But
it totally didn't. The amount of stuff that never went anywhere.
Well, even talking about these old comps, I mean, like things went down that are not on video. Like it is, and that's part of why I love having people like you on, is there was shit that was happening that I just love documenting it, because there was some, like Diana, as you said her name was, like I love hearing stuff like that. I'm like, oh, another name I've never heard of, and you were there, and like you got to watch this girl just rip lines and send it, and that was a long time ago. You guys were laying it down on some better gear, but not as good as it is now, you know? So it's pretty cool.
That was back when like G3 made, I guess, the best binding at the time.
Yeah, you guys were all on Targas for sure. All of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still remember far out. I remember blowing up so many of those things. I remember one of the very first drop on a contest line in, I mean, we can talk bad about that thing now because, well, G3 doesn't even make a Telemark binding now.
Right.
So it's okay. First cliff, stomped the landing with still 3/4 of the run to go, but I blew the binding off, or the cable just blew up. I'm like, far out, whoops. So I just stuck my little duckbill in and just skied my way down just to get down the rest of the run.
Just in the toe piece.
Yeah, like,
oh man,
this sucks. This is not cool. Yeah, look, skiing with Scott and like all those guys skiing around. I surprisingly didn't ski most of the time with those guys. I somehow was, I don't know, I got hooked in with a lot of the big Alpine crew then. I chased Dan Treadway everywhere I possibly could, trying to keep up with that guy.
That guy's a legend. That guy's a legend too.
Dan Treadway. They called him Big Air Dan or Big Hair Dan.
Yeah.
And dude, he just flew. Like he literally just sent every big cliff there was in Whistler and surrounding everywhere. He got kicked out of off Whistler Mountain for skiing a permanently closed line off Whistler Peak. He Big Air Dan was like, but you just had to check. You'd start out with him and he lost me all the time. But I skied with, way back then, it was like Pierre-Yves LeBlanc, Hugo Harrison, then like Dana Flair, Moss Patterson was like, he ended up moving in. I lived in an RV forever. Moss Patterson one year moved into the bus with me, and him and I came down we traveled all the resort, the contests. We just did a lot of crazy stuff. Moss won the Sick Bird quite a few times, doing big backflips off he was like Seth Morrison, but Seth was in every movie, and Moss was like this little country boy. He's like Nelson, BC, and he'd huck himself off 80-foot backflips. He'd ski crazy lines, and then he was in the pub as late, charging harder there. Did.
Yeah, that's cool that you were there with.
That's all of us.
That's cool that you were there with Dana Flair too. I actually linked up with him at a punk rock show in Vancouver a couple of years ago. Good dude. There's some
rad. No, Dana's he's like a hero, but like a best friend, like family. That whole little 604 Jib crew. Jib Culture was a little brand that they sort of put together. And it was Dana and Robbie Dag and Chris Turpin, huge little crew. But all those dudes, you just travel and you just chase them around the hill. Wherever they went, I went, skied every single line that they skied, and just trying to keep up and trying to do what they did. And you kind of if you're doing that every day, if you're not getting good, there's kind of something wrong with you, I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, so how did you end up linking up with Bones? Because it seems like you were kind of rolling, like you said, I mean, you're kind of rolling with this Alpine crew, like, you know, there's kind of the race stuff going on, and there's some crossover. You guys are doing comps. How did you and Bones link up, and how did you get in those first early Unparalleled movies then?
The first time I filmed with Bones was in Jackson Hole. I had gone down I was in Vail for I think not Gravity Games, or maybe it was Gravity Games, whatever the other X Games. It wasn't X Games, but it was,
I think you're right, Gravity Games.
That other one.
Yeah.
I was down there to do a skier cross event, and I thought, I'll just try like slope style and whatevs. And the girl, I was traveling with Alicia Klein, because she was from Sun Peaks as well. So her and I drove down, and I was doing that, and she won. And that's when Volant said, "Hey, we're sending you to Europe to finish the skier cross tour." And I went, cool, Alicia, that's awesome. Now, what do I do? How do I get home? I'm in Snowbird going, and I met a Jackson Hole dude, and I can't believe I'm going to forget this guy's name. He just said, "Dude, why don't you come, and I'm going over to Jackson, and I've got a couch, and we'll probably do some filming, and we'll just do whatever, and we'll ski." And I went, okay. So next thing I know, I've left Utah. We're in Jackson, and I'm on Teton Pass in the back of a pickup truck with a whole bunch of tele skiers. There was BJ Brewer. There was, like it was
like that era, that crew
era of people. I get this would have been Unparalleled 1.
Yeah. BJ.
And we
awesome guy.
We filmed a powder segment up on Teton Pass, just doing shuttle laps with the back of a pickup truck as our shuttle vehicle.
Oh, that's funny. So you just like ended up in Jackson randomly, and then you meet Bones, you meet BJ, you meet all these guys, and just end up being in the movie. Basically,
just went, okay, yeah, cool, let's do that.
That's awesome.
With them. Well, there was a contest at the end of the time.
Yeah,
thank God for that contest, because that's how I ended up getting home. The crew, like Scotty and Diane and those guys, had come up from Whistler.
Oh, see, this was the early 2000s.
That was my ride back to Whistler.
Right. So this is when, when the USTSA had their free ski telemark tour. I know exactly. Okay, that makes sense.
So that's how I got home. But while I was in Jackson, because that was I'd hooked up with Volant my sort of last year over at Sun Peaks. I'd actually helped the Volant guys at one of the Ski Canada demo days. And because I was with the head designer and pretty much the guy for Volant, I had always obviously been like really plugging in his ear and talking to him about stuff. And at the end of that trip, he goes, or that week of testing, he goes, well, dude, I want to give you a pair of skis just like as kind of like as payment for helping me out this week. But we're starting this machete mafia and I want you on that. I'm like, wait, what? For real? He goes, yeah. So Shane is still the #1 Volant man. Like, he was Volant. And it's you, it's Shane, Nat Ross. I'd never heard of him, but this guy said, yeah, there's this other tele guy who's doing some pretty badass stuff. He's on them as well. We want you on that team. So as soon as here's these skis, do whatever you want with them. But I'm going to get you contract and I'm going to get you a bunch of skis set up and rad. And I went, epic. That was just the coolest thing ever. But while I was in Jackson Hole that month, Powder came into town and they were doing a bit of a demo day. So the Volant crew was in and I went, oh yeah, hanging out there. And that's when I met Micah Black and the whole TGR family. And they said, hey, come on up. Sick Rick and Micah and a few other crew were going up Teton Pass again. But Rick Armstrong had this thing he wanted to take everybody up in the Tetons. So I got to go on that little trip with them that day. And that's still one of the that was still it's still burned into my brain that day, going up the hill with all the TGR guys. Like when I was running the shop in Sun Peaks, we showed the TGR movies and I was like, that's badass. I'm going to do that.
So did you get to film with them a little bit?
Yeah, I did a couple of days around Jackson with the TGR guys. I don't know if any of it actually made anything, but
yeah, but you got to be
there. I was
there.
Skiing with them, so I just didn't care what happened with it.
What a cool experience, man. And that man, talk about an era, like sick. Yeah. Rick Armstrong, Micah Black. If people have not, like if you're a youngster and you've never watched old TGR, go dig that up and watch these guys getting after it. I mean, it is real deal skiing, man. I mean, and it's nobody was doing it.
Yeah, man, they were just Jackson Hole locals pointing the camera at. I mean, it was lines that they had skied forever since, like, they just every run, everything. As soon as the skies cleared, the camera just pointed everywhere, and they were just like boom, 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 sending everything, and like it was starting to finally get on film. And like Jackson is it's a free ride mecca. If you can make it in Jackson, that's kind of a place to definitely make a name. You start sending crazy stuff there, you can do crazy stuff anywhere.
Yeah, for sure. Well, what a cool story, man. So you get hooked up with Volant. You got G3, I think you were doing stuff with them early on. And then so you kind of hang out in Western Canada in that early section doing some comps, and you're in a couple of these movies and whatnot. Like when did you transition to Australia? Was it kind of after that section of time, or were you doing like full winter, like endless winter kind of style?
I was actually just supposed to come down to Australia for one more winter. Like I was, everything was like so full on. I was just doing a couple 100 days every day, every year, skiing cool stuff, just doing my thing in Whistler. At the time, newly bride had left she had to come back because her cousin was getting married and her best friend was getting married. And I said, well, nah, I'm doing this winter. So we're like, yeah, cool. All right. She went back to Australia. I did one more winter. That was the year Moss moved into the RV with me. And we did another season of filming in town, like in Whistler. We did some more comps. And then as soon as the ski and snowboard festival was finished in Whistler in the spring, I jumped on a plane, came to Australia. We were going to spend the season down here, do a bunch of stuff, and then November be back to Whistler. I had just sort of made contacts with Nordica to be there sort of next. I was going to do new stuff with them. They were at the time one of the title sponsors for Matchstick. So I was like, yep, cool. That's going to be the year I get to really do some cool shit. And about halfway through that winter, we sort of went, hey, let's stay. Australia's cool. Surfing's cool.
And how many years ago was that?
Well, that was 16 years ago. I have now been back to Canada twice, maybe 3 times.
Wow.
Never of which were winter. And only once was back to Whistler.
Wow. So like you kind of have this like, hey, I'm going to go down and we'll be back. And here you are 16 years later. I mean, everything just completely changed.
I ended up selling my RV to, actually, Charlie Cannon. You would remember Charlie Cannon.
You sold your RV to Charlie?
I sold my RV to Charlie.
Oh, man.
He took that and went on his little way, still skiing, I think his summer thing was paddling. It was a lot of water, I remember, for him in the summer. He's probably still floating down a river somewhere.
Oh man, yeah. I think actually, that's a good person I should dig up. I hadn't thought about.
You got to get on to him next.
Oh man, I actually, funny enough, I lived in a house he bought in Salt Lake randomly for like a summer, and yeah, he's another man. That kid was he is an amazing athlete, and he just sent it. He was another. Yeah. I would love to see you guys skiing together. Yeah, I think he's an acupuncturist up in Oregon, if I remember right.
Oh wow.
Yeah, he went back to school, and yeah, I'll have to look into. That's a good name I hadn't thought about in a while. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, get on to him for sure.
So he buys your RV from you after you moved to Australia?
RV. I sort of kind of just I just told everybody in Whistler, just if you need stuff, there was bikes, there was skis, there was everything there. A friend from Australia was up in Whistler that summer, so he grabbed like my bouldering pad and my rock climbing gear and like a couple of photo albums. And that was all I got out of my entire life from that bus was that. And everybody around the area got sorted out with all sorts of good gear for making my bus disappear.
That's amazing. So did you so you end up in Australia. How long have you been working with Bruce at Wilderness? And for Wilderness Sports, for those that don't know, is a shop it's in Jindabyne, right?
Yeah. Yep. We've got a shop in Jindy, and we actually have a little Nordic shop in Perisher, like right up in Perisher Valley, that does all the like classic and skate skiing stuff, because the Nordic trails are virtually right across. They're like 25 meters away from the front door of our shop. So we do all that stuff up there. We do lessons out of there. Backcountry ski trips get organized from there. There's a little bit of NTN and cable Telemark gear there on the resort. But then pretty much everything is, all the main stuff happens down in Jindy.
Yeah. So and how long ago did you start working there? Just recently, or was this?
Well, I guess this is probably winter number 4 or 5 in a row that I've been solid in the shop. The first year, way back, that first trip to Australia, I lived in the Wilderness Sports attic.
No way.
For probably the first month. G3 told me, so Bruce is a guy that, Bruce has done like everything all over the world. He's guided in Nepal. He's guided everywhere he could. He's done some cool stuff. His wife Roz has done as much different cool stuff as well, and they have this, like, nobody can talk Telemark in Australia without Bruce's name coming up and without the Wilderness Sports store coming up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, that's kind of how
you've had Bruce in your store over in Salt Lake.
Oh yeah, no, and I met Bruce probably, man, it's probably close to 20 years ago. I don't remember exactly how, but someone had introduced us at like a trade show, or something like that. And hey, this is the guy in Australia. He's always done a really good job of staying in touch. And, I messaged him, told him we need to get him on the podcast too. I'm sure that'd be a fascinating story, digging into running a shop.
Dude, you gotta, we've already gone. We said, we'll chat for an hour. If you're gonna, when you talk to Bruce, you gotta like make sure you've got the whole afternoon clear.
I know. I don't, because I think what's so cool about talking to you guys down there, and he is sort of he is a connector for so many people, and everybody, like, even up here, you know, it's like, oh, hey, we're talking about Telemark in Australia. Like, everybody's going to go to talk about wilderness at some point just because he's been doing it for so long, you know? And
Yeah.
he's trying to help it stay relevant and make people have access to gear. I think that's the hardest thing. Maybe you can shed some light on this too, is it's got to be so difficult just to get the equipment there, you know, in a like an easy way, you know, because I know we ship stuff down there, and I mean, you got to pay taxes, and there's no easy way to get Telemark gear there, you know.
Nah, it's insane. I was talking to, because I work with Scarpa, and so I was talking to the guys here that bring it in, and you know, we were like, we were actually talking numbers compared to, like, you know, what happens in Australia to what happens in other places, and he was telling me they sell about 200 plastic boots. Not just Telemark, not just AT, plastic ski.
Oh, wow. Like AT and Telemark total.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then he said so Europe, one model of AT boot, they sell over 12,000 of that one model.
So what you're saying is you don't have the numbers to support it? No, I'm just
I don't think there's well, there's
it's got to be chicken or the egg. It's got to be a chicken or the egg thing too, because in order to get more Telemark gears, you got to have rentals. You got to have access to gear.
Have that gear. People got to try it.
Yeah, and then you got to have the retail component to get. I get it, and I think that's the argument too. Is if you can get gear there, it may. I mean, people need to have a long-term objective, you know. But I even as you're saying that, I'm like, okay, I get it. The numbers are low, but if you don't start anywhere, it's like, you can't grow it if there's nothing, if you can't try it, basically, you know?
Totally.
So
we've got a big fleet, big fleet. It ain't big. We've got a fleet of 22 designs. We've got the Outlaws and Lynx mounted on a bunch of different skis, and we've got the Major. We even just received Major version 3. Actually just arrived last week.
Oh, wow. So you just saw Major 3.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
As much as we're trying to be like we're at the forefront, but we're also, especially right now, it's just so hard getting new gear. Chris and Jake and the guys at 22 are like, they're still building stock to send over for our winter order.
Yeah.
We've been sold out of Outlaws for probably a couple weeks now. So, you know, just getting gear into the country makes it pretty hard, and getting the good gear is even harder. But Bruce is like, you know what? We're just doing it. We're just getting it. It's going to be here, and we're going to put people on it, and we're going to talk it up in the store, and people are going to do it. And they're going to, once they do it, once they try, they're like, wow, this is rad.
Yeah.
But you're right. If it's not there, they're not going to try it.
No. And that's why I always feel for you guys down there. Is I mean, Telemark as a business anywhere in the globe is a puzzle. You guys are even a more unique puzzle because you're an island. I mean, you're not attached to anybody else, and you're so far away. And a lot of this stuff is coming from it's coming from Europe. It's coming from the States. It's I applaud. I love that attitude too. 'Cause, and guys like Bruce, it's like putting his neck out there and saying, hey, we're doing this and we're going to figure it out. And he's been doing that for a really long time, which is why people go to you guys. And, I think that's awesome, man. That's so cool. You're working there too. It's awesome to see that you ended up there.
Yeah, I love it. Like there's nowhere else. There is nowhere else in town that I would want to. There's a lot of people trying to do the backcountry thing now, and there's no one that really does it. Or there's shops that sort of, I've got a bit of this and I've got a bit of this, and this supplier can get us this sort of stuff. But I guess Bruce has been doing it forever, and because we guide and we take people on tours, we use the gear like every day. It's not like one of our staff members goes out and does some tours here and there, but that's the only thing we do is backcountry touring and Telemark. And so everybody in the shop begins to know more and more about the gear, and we kind of go, yeah, you know what? That's shit. Don't use that. But this works really good. Try this. And they go, oh, no one's ever told me that something they sell is shit.
That's good. You got to build trust with people, and I think those are the best shops, man. Yeah. And they see us out in the mountains all the time. Like if I'm not in the store, I'm either on the ski resort or I'm out in the main range. Yep.
And that I've had customers. I remember a tour last year. I was out on the col between the Sentinel and the Crags, and this lady that had bought ski boots from me earlier in the week, she's out there, and she's like, oh my God. Oh, and she like, thank God she was having the best tour ever. Her boots were comfy and awesome. And her partner.
Yeah, that could have gone both ways there, bro.
Yeah. But her partner that was in a pair of boots that had been bought somewhere else. And he's like, God, I need to find a boot fitter. I need to find, these boots are killing me. And the partner goes, you know how I love my boots that I just bought? That's the guy right there that fit them. And he's like, oh my God. When are you back in the store? When are you coming back? I'm like, well,
I'm going to go skiing first.
I'm out here for a couple of days. So I'll see you in a couple of days in the store and let's make those things work again. He's like, yeah, but I'm skiing for the next couple of days. I go,
me too.
Me too. I'm sorry, but yeah. But we got him fixed up. He was stoked, and he's out there doing his thing again.
I love it. That's awesome. Well, man, what a cool conversation. I'm so glad to get to know you a little bit better, and man, what a crazy adventure you've had, and you're one of those. I'm so glad we got to catch up, because it's like your story. It's like where I picked up in your storyline. I didn't even know about Ontario and Placid and all. I mean, it's so cool that you went from there to Whistler. I mean, you're there during one of the coolest times just in snow sports history, and some of those guys you were talking about, and it's just, I encourage anybody, Telemark, snowboard, whatever, go back and watch movies from the late 90s. They're pure and amazing, and I think it's cool that you were part of all that with the Telemark stuff, Unparalleled, the Toughguy stuff, and now you're in Australia. So, I mean, I'd say you've had a pretty good run, bro. You've gone some cool places.
It's pretty good. I don't think I'm done yet. I think, I kind of just did my Well, I guess it wasn't my first backflip, but
Oh, I saw that photo. That's awesome.
about 20 some years ago up on the glacier, I was standing on top of a jump. Unbeknownst to me, I was standing beside a little scrawny, pimply faced Tanner Hall. It was like the year before Tanner became Tanner. And I said, I want to do a backflip. What do I do? Because I've already seen this kid doing like some cool stuff. And he goes, well, I don't know. You just go down there and you just do it. And I went,
You're like, sweet
okay.
technical advice, bro. Thank you.
He goes, do you want me to do one and then you do it? I'm like, yeah, cool. All right, let's do that. I'm like, shit, this like tiny little Grom is gonna, like, he's showing me up. I mean, I was never a park skier. I'm not a park skier, but if you're gonna play on the glacier, you gotta do cool stuff. So I figured, well, let's do some cool stuff. So he went and he did some styly, rad backflip, and I'm left at the top of the park going, well, I guess I have to do it. And so I did it, and I pretty much sort of landed. My skis were on snow, but so was my back, and I slid all the way back down to them, and I went, that was pretty cool. But I didn't really do any more after that. And I went, like, these days, the only thing people do is backflips off cliffs. And I went, I probably should do that. Yeah. So I finally started doing them this year. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. So I'm not done yet, I don't think.
No, you got plenty of life in you, dude.
I got some more stuff I want to figure out and do, and get some more people on Tele skis, some more kids on Tele skis. And who knows? There's going to be all sorts of new stuff.
Absolutely, man. Well, so where can people find you on the social medias? Because you do a good job of posting stuff, and I think everyone would love to check it out. So on what's your Instagram handle that people can follow you at?
So my Instagram is Steve Crazy with a couple of underscores at the end. My little, what do they call it, avatar, or my headshot is a bike helmet / ski helmet, jacket, jersey looking thing. I morphed summer and winter into one little headshot.
Oh, I love it.
So that's me on socials. I'm on Facebook. I did a little YouTube thing, but I don't really. If you want to see my last ski segment, my last segment from Toughguy Productions is up there. So just Google Steve Crazy Telemark, and that'll find a couple of different things on there.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to post a link to it and into the socials too, so people can check it out, man. But
thank you,
dude. Thank you for let's do this again, and yeah, this is great. I like kind of just getting these initial ones out of the way, because then it's easy to just let me know what's going on, and when something cool is happening, we can hop on and do another one. So
sick. Well, there's a backcountry festival down in Hotham next month. The way these lockdowns are going, it doesn't look like we're getting there. Normally, Bruce and I would go down with our entire fleet of Telemark and our AT gear and demo it out and get everybody on it. But it's going to be happening, but it's going to be a lot smaller this year. And, well, as long as they don't end up closing up again. But that's the next cool thing that's going to happen in Australia. as far as Telemark and backcountry scene is.
Yeah, and hopefully that'll happen, man. I know you guys have been dealing with the lockdowns and stuff, and hopefully that eases up so you guys can get down there and do that. So I'll try to, before we post this, I'll try to make sure and see if there's an update on it, and link to it. So, but my brother, thank you so much, and tell Bruce hello, and I will. When I've got an entire afternoon, I will definitely hit him up, and we'll do a long one with him.
Nice. Yeah, man. Thanks heaps for this one, and can't wait to check in time to time and do all sorts of more stuff with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yep. Stay in touch and enjoy the PAL, and until we talk to you next time.
Epic. Right on, man. Catch you soon.
Yep. Take it easy, bro.
Bye.
All right. Always good to dig back into that era. And Steve, we've been talking about doing this podcast forever, and it's nice to get him on the horn and chat a little bit about his background. And yeah, kind of like I was saying during the conversation, I mean, he was one of those guys we kind of crisscrossed paths, but never really met. And it was always kind of videos I was watching of him. And like I was saying, I really think he was one of the first guys that I ever saw that was really pushing skiing backwards in powder on Telemark skis. And I just always remember thinking that's wild. Like that era that we were talking about, kind of that early Canadian Air Force stuff, and being up in the Whistler area, such an important part of ski culture, snow culture in general, because so many things were changing and evolving. And including in the Telemark scene, a lot of those early videos kind of touched on that glacier scene that we were talking about, early park skiing, big mountain freeride stuff. And there's a lot of Telemark stuff that's kind of built in there that, it was fun to kind of start bringing that to light a little bit, talking to Steve. And I love that he's down in Australia, working at Wilderness Sports. His boss, Bruce, awesome guy, and I'd love to get him on the podcast. And just cool to see kind of where Steve was and then where he ended up. And it's a great big Telemark family out there. It's good to see a lot of those people kind of connecting in different ways as time goes on. So before I let you go, like always, I want to remind you to sign up for the mailing list. It's in the show notes. If you haven't signed up, we've been continuing that through the summer, but that's something that we do weekly, probably starting in the next month or so. That way you can get all the content at once, what's going on. It's kind of a singular place where you can receive all the information about what's going on at the Freeheel Life shop, Telemark Skier Magazine, and just the Telemark world at large. And we'd love for you guys to be a part of that. As always, as we lead into the season, you're starting to think about gear, boots, skis, bindings, fixing stuff, accessories, lifestyle, so you can rep Telemark in your local area. We want to be your preferred Telemark shop. And you can find us online at freeheellife.com and on all the socials at freeheellife. And we would love to help you get on the hill this year and continue giving you the expertise that we value here, and we hope you value out there, to answer your questions and keep Telemark rolling. If you're interested in articles, gear reviews, and more, you can always check out telemarkskier.com. Same thing, during the summer, we've kind of kept that going. We relaunched it. It's subscription based on the premium content. It's 100% powered by you, and we would love for you guys to be a part of that. We're going to be putting together a boot and binding guide as we kind of head into the fall time, something that's very useful if you're looking to buy gear. We've got Craig Dostie running that and writing some fantastic news pieces and premium content, especially around the gear stuff. And we also have a forum that is free, and we would love for you to congregate over there and help us build that community. If you have any questions for me or comments, you want to let me know that the podcast is great, or you think it sucks, or whatever you want to say, email me, podcast@freeheellife.com. Always love hearing from everybody out there, and it is a pleasure doing these every week because it keeps it top of mind with me. I love talking about the history, what's going on in the current state of Telemark. And yeah, we're just going to have more and more to talk about, especially as we head into the winter, because that's usually when things start firing up in most places. So thank you for listening. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, take a second to rate and review the podcast. It helps get it out in front of some more people, and that's always appreciated. Or just tell your friends and tell them to come check it out. So until next week, my friends, I'll miss you, but I'll be back next Monday with another podcast. And until then, spread Telemark always.